The morning rush had just begun at a small diner on the edge of town. The scent of coffee filled the air as plates clattered and customers chatted. Among the chaos, a young waitress moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays and refilling coffee cups with a warm smile. Her name was Emily. She had been working at the diner for 3 years, juggling long shifts while supporting her younger brother and their sick mother. Life hadn't been easy for her, but she never let it show. Emily wasn't just any waitress. She remembered customers' names, their favorite meals, and even little details about their lives. She had a way of making everyone feel welcome, no matter who they were. Despite her struggles, she never complained. Her coworkers knew she worked double shifts just to make ends meet. Rent, medical bills, and daily expenses piled up, but she always found a way to get by. She had dreams, of course. She wanted to go back to school, maybe start her own business one day. But right now, those dreams had to wait. There were more important things. Her family needed her. Customers adored her for her kindness. She listened to their stories, laughed at their jokes, and offered a comforting word when someone was having a bad day. She was the heart of the diner, the person who made a simple meal feel like home. But Emily had no idea that her life was about to change in a way she never expected. All it would take was one stranger, one meal, and one act of kindness. It was a quiet afternoon when he walked into the diner. The lunch rush had died down, and only a few customers remained, sipping their coffee or finishing their meals. Emily was behind the counter, wiping down tables when she noticed the man. He wasn't a regular. He looked out of place in the small diner, dressed in a well-fitted suit, but there was something unassuming about him. He didn't draw attention to himself. He took a seat at a booth near the window and glanced at the menu. Emily walked over with her usual bright smile. "Welcome. Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. The man looked up and nodded. "Just a coffee, please." "Black." Emily poured him a fresh cup and set it down gently. "Take your time. Let me know if you need anything else." He nodded again, but this time, there was a hint of a smile. As Emily went back to work, she noticed him watching, not in a rude way but with quiet curiosity. She was used to all kinds of customers, but something about him felt different. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't distracted by his phone or a newspaper. He just observed. After a few minutes, he called her back over. "What do you recommend?" he asked. His voice was calm, deep, and polite. Emily grinned. "If you're really hungry, the special is great today, but if you just want something light, our grilled cheese is a favorite." He thought for a moment. "I'll have the special then." She scribbled down the order and walked away. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place it. Maybe he reminded her of someone. As she brought his food, she made small talk like she did with everyone. She asked if he was from around here. He shook his head, but didn't offer more details. Still, there was something in his eyes. A kindness, a quiet depth. She had no idea that this simple interaction would lead to something extraordinary. Emily set the plate down in front of the man and smiled. "Enjoy your meal," she said cheerfully before stepping away to check on another table. The man picked up his fork but didn't start eating right away. Instead, he watched the way Emily moved around the diner. She greeted an elderly couple by name, refilled a young boy's lemonade before he even had to ask, and laughed at a joke one of the regulars told. There was something different about her. She wasn't just doing her job, she genuinely cared. A few minutes later, Emily passed by his table again. She noticed he had barely touched his food. "Everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head. He nodded. "Yes, it's great. Just taking my time." Emily smiled. "No rush. I always say food tastes better when you enjoy it slowly." The man chuckled. "That's good advice." For a moment there was silence. Then he spoke again. "You seem to really love your job." Emily shrugged. "It's not easy, but I meet amazing people every day. That makes it worth it." He studied her face. "You must have a good life philosophy." She laughed softly. "I don't know about that. I just believe in being kind. You never know what someone's going through." The man nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's rare." Emily blushed slightly, brushing off the compliment. "I don't think so. There are a lot of good people out there." She didn't notice the way his eyes lingered on her as she walked away. For the next few minutes, the man quietly ate his meal, listening to the sounds of the diner, the clinking of silverware, the hum of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter. When he finished, he placed his fork down neatly and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a stack of bills and carefully slid them under the edge of the plate. Then, without a word, he stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the door. Emily was busy at the counter and didn't see him leave. She had no idea what he had just done, but she was about to find out. Emily wiped her hands on her apron as she made her way back to the man's table. She noticed his plate was empty, his coffee cup nearly drained, but he was gone. She picked up the plate as usual, ready to clear the table for the next customer. Then she saw it. A thick stack of bills sat neatly underneath the plate. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Maybe he had left a 20 or a 50, and the stack just made it look bigger. But as she lifted the money, her hands froze, her breath caught in her throat. These weren't 20s or 50s. They were $100 bills. Emily blinked, trying to make sense of what she was holding. She quickly counted. 1, 2, 3. Her fingers trembled as she kept going. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. The stack kept going. $100,000. Her knees nearly buckled. She looked around the diner, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her eyes darted to the door, but the man was gone. He had disappeared as quickly as he had come. "Emily, are you okay?" One of her co-workers asked, noticing her pale face. She couldn't find the words. She simply held up the money. Her manager, who had just stepped out from the back, saw it too. His eyes widened. "Where did that come from?" The man at this table," Emily stammered. "He left it." Her co-workers gathered around, all staring in shock. "No way," one of them whispered. "This has to be a mistake," another said. But there was no mistake. Under the stack of bills, a small note rested on the table. Emily grabbed it with shaky fingers and read the simple message written in neat handwriting. "For your kindness, keep going." Tears welled up in her eyes. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some random accident. Someone had just changed her life in an instant. She pressed the note against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. She had spent years working tirelessly, putting others before herself, struggling just to make it to the next day. And now, in one moment, everything was different. She had never even learned his name. Emily stood frozen, the weight of the money in her hands feeling unreal. Her co-workers stared at her, their mouths slightly open, trying to process what had just happened. "This can't be real," one of them muttered. Emily shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "It is." She felt her chest tighten, her breath coming out in short gasps. A warmth spread through her, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something else, overwhelming gratitude. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. She had been holding herself together for so long, never letting the weight of her struggles show. But now, it was as if a dam had broken inside her. She covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking as tears slipped down her cheeks. Her manager placed a gentle hand on her back. "Emily, are you okay?" She let out a small, breathless laugh between her tears. "I don't know. I don't know what to do." The whole diner was buzzing now. Customers who had witnessed the moment started whispering, some pulling out their phones, trying to piece together what had happened. A woman sitting at the counter smiled warmly. "Sweetheart, you deserve this." Another customer chimed in. "Who was that man? Do you know him?" Emily wiped her face and shook her head. "No, I don't even know his name. He just came in, had his meal, and left this." She looked down at the small note again. "For your kindness, keep going." Her hands trembled as she read it over and over. The money wasn't just a tip. It was something more. It was a recognition of who she was, of everything she had done without expecting anything in return. Her thoughts raced. She could pay off the medical bills that had been crushing her family. She could finally breathe without worrying about rent. Maybe, just maybe, she could even start saving for her future. But what moved her the most wasn't the money itself, it was the reason behind it. This man, a complete stranger, had seen something in her. He had recognized her kindness, her hard work, her struggles, and he had chosen to change her life in an instant. She pressed the note to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." Even though he was gone, even though she didn't know his name, she hoped he somehow knew just how much this meant to her. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Emily kept the money close, afraid that if she blinked, it would all disappear. Word spread quickly around the diner. Customers couldn't stop talking about it. Some took photos of the note and the stack of bills, posting about the unbelievable act of kindness online. Within hours, the story started gaining attention. Emily's phone buzzed with messages from friends and family. People she hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, asking if the story was real. Later that night, after her shift, she sat in her tiny apartment, scrolling through her phone. One of the posts about the mysterious man had gone viral. People in the comments were speculating about who he was. Some said he might be a celebrity. Others thought he was just a wealthy man who believed in giving back. Then, someone posted a photo. It was an old article about a billionaire known for his secret generosity. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him instantly. His name was James Carter, a self-made billionaire who had built his fortune in technology. Unlike many wealthy people, he stayed out of the spotlight. But there were stories, whispers of him quietly helping people in need. A struggling single mother had found an anonymous check in her mailbox. A homeless veteran had been gifted a house. The details were always mysterious, but now it all made sense. He hadn't wanted recognition. He hadn't even wanted her to know who he was. Emily stared at the screen, her heart pounding. He had chosen her. Out of all the people in the world, he had walked into her small diner, sat at her table, and decided she was worthy of something incredible. Tears welled up in her eyes again. She wasn't just lucky, she had been seen. And that was something she would never forget. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling different. Lighter. For the first time in years, she didn't have to wake up worrying about how to pay rent, how to cover her mother's medical bills, or how to make ends meet. She held the small note in her hands, reading the words again. For your kindness, keep going. She had spent her whole life putting others first, never expecting anything in return. And now, someone had given her something she never thought possible. A fresh start. Emily decided she wasn't going to waste it. The first thing she did was pay off the medical bills that had been piling up. Seeing the relief on her mother's face made her eyes well up with tears. Next, she put some of the money aside for her little brother's education. He had dreams of becoming a doctor, and now she could help him get there. But Emily didn't stop there. She knew what it felt like to struggle, to work hard every day, and still feel like it wasn't enough. So she decided to pay it forward. One evening, she left a $1,000 tip for a single mother working late at a nearby cafe. The look on the woman's face reminded Emily of herself. A week later, she helped a coworker who had been struggling with rent, slipping an envelope of cash into their locker without a name. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because she understood. Word of her story continued to spread. People reached out, not just to congratulate her, but to share how inspired they were. They started doing their own small acts of kindness, buying meals for strangers, leaving generous tips, helping those in need. One man's generosity had created a ripple effect. Emily still worked at the diner, but now she carried something new with her. Hope. She had always believed in kindness, but now she had proof that it truly had the power to change lives. And as she went about her day, greeting customers with her warm smile, she knew one thing for sure. She would never stop paying it forward, because kindness was meant to be shared.